afternoon. I welcome all to my talk, Flow Package Best Practices. Apart from some alias names like the only guy from India, my real name is Pankej Lele, and I live in Goa, India, where there are like lot of beaches and good sun. I have been working as a founder, director and CTO of our own family-owned company called as Lelesis Infotech Private Limited. And we have our own office in Goa, and we have 60 developers working in fully agile mode, and we mainly working in Typo 3 for last 6 years, and it's all related technologies and also some Zen and Sencha. Little bit about my flow experience so far. I have been a part of the project, which is a very large enterprise level project, and this project is like we have 7 teams and around 20 developers, more than 20 developers, and working from three different countries. And we started our we started the first package in Flow 3 1.0 in November 2011, and we have the first public release on March 2012. So apart from this experience, you can find me hanging out in the IRC channels and mailing lists. So I'm here to share my experience so far from this big project, and I want you to walk you through some 45 best practices which can help you to have your flow application run very efficiently. You make sure you achieve a good quality, and as you'll be working in many team members, you can avoid common errors, and yes, so flexibility can be also one of the points. So I have divided my best practice into 2 sections, like architecture and coding. So flow is like, I think like it's more think and write less kind of framework. So you need to spend more time in deeply thinking over what is the requirement and define everything at the beginning, and then you start the programming. So the program is like you start very later. So let's begin with my 45 best practices. The first one I want to say is always start with a UML diagram of your full package, or like whatever packages you are going to develop. And in these packages you should like define all your classes, including domain models, their associations, also their directions like bidirectional, unidirectional, and maybe also other classes like controllers, what controls you're going to have, what actions you're going to have, what arguments have, or any other classes like what view helpers, aspects, exceptions, many other things. So for this, I would like to suggest you one tool which this Argo UML, which is cross-platform, which works on all platforms, and it is free. And I tried many others counterparts of this, but like I feel this is one of the things I want to recommend. Next is while doing this domain model, you should really try to avoid bidirectional, too many bidirectional relations, which is also one of the best practices written you can find on the Doctrine 2 documentation. It is always a good idea. You can think about having define interfaces within your package, and Flow has a nice possibility that you can set the default implementation of the interface. So for example, if you are working on a shop project and you have like different payment handlers, so what you can do is simply define a payment handler interface, and there can be many implementations of the payment handler interface. And then what you can do is, using reflection service, you can easily build a list of available payment options for the user, and if the user selects that, then you can have the fully working solution. It will be a good practice to avoid static functions from your classes, and which is something not fully supported by the PHP unit if you are looking for a completely test-driven development. Then it is another good practice is to write domain services. Actually, I got this concept from the Flow Guru, Robert. And actually he has a workshop on this, so he will go into details more tomorrow, I guess. So a quick look is like, when you write domain services, you just develop all your business logic in the domain service class, and that is also one of the topic Stefan was discussing in the morning. So you have all your business logic in the class for each domain model, and then you can have a web controller, and you can have a CLI controller, or maybe even you can have a REST controller later on, and it shares the same business logic. Yeah, while doing the class design or the domain model design, you can always think about using the doctrine inheritance mapping effectively, so that kind of like, if you have this example, if you want to have a media object and it's like always, we can say it's audio and video, so instead of having a property with two values confusing, what you can do is you can have a base class which is abstract media, and then you can have two classes just extends the media, so we have audio and video. Another practice is to define class constants where you do not really need to remember few values, so that you just type in the class name : you get automatically from your, like what your ID are using, you'll get the constant name, and so this way you really do not have to like worry about what is the value, and if somebody changes the value, still don't care. So you can see an example like from the core, there is electronic address, and you can set the type like this using the constant. Yeah, so those were few best practices from the architecture, and I would like you to go to some of the coding. I mean, there are many than the architecture level. So I have divided these best practices for coding in different categories because there are many. So this category is post kickstart, and always when you kickstart your domain models, and I mean the domain models, the Kickstarter doesn't really kickstart all your relations like collections and all these things. So what you have to do is you should always fill up those, like if you have the collections, you should always define these three methods to add, remove, and get all foreign objects from that collection property. So for example, you can see this abstract party class if you like. And it is always one of the other recommendation from doctrine to always initialize your collections in the constructor, so it saves a little bit time, I can say saves a little bit work for the doctrine. Yeah, also another thing, like when you kickstart, there are no any validations defined. This is fine. So it is always good to define all your validators on your properties, so that you do not face any errors later on. So like what I'm trying to say is, do things very clean from the beginning, and then just go on adding more stuff. It is from Kickstart, there is, I mean, always accrued actions kickstarted, so maybe there can be a case that you don't need a delete action. So if you just leave that delete action and if you do not have a proper security policy defined, it may be possible that somebody can really hack and delete your object. So just have a look at what is not used, just delete it. And also it's a good practice to completely delete the code which is not in use, and I mean the bad practice would be to comment it out, so which is not a good thing. Okay, next is debugging. When you want to see some output of the variable, like what the variable contains or what type of variable it is, if you use Vatom from PHP native, I mean generally you will not see anything, you will just see blank page. So instead you can use this custom Vatom from Flow. And the more benefit is like, okay, so you'll no more have any memory out errors, and also you will get some more interesting object information like this. So where you can see different color coded things, like whether the object is a singleton or object has a proxy class or not, or yeah, it's like some kind of thing. Yeah, another best thing I would like to recommend is there is a debug toolbar package available on Packagist. which you can try to use as a your dev requirement for your project. So it gives when you load the request in the browser, at the bottom it shows the toolbar output automatically, and from there you can see which queries were executed, how much memory was used, and what functions were executed, and many more things. Little bit more about like composer category. It always happens that you go on integrating some libraries and then you forget about mentioning those required things in the composer JSON. So it is always a good practice. You can define those dependencies right away in the composer JSON. Otherwise, when the project goes until a deployment, nobody knows what's happening, and finally the project doesn't work on the deployment server. So it's always good to define these requirements right away. So I mean, you can also define these packages from PHP, like the PHP extensions also. Something about the configuration, the settings we can say. You might be knowing there is a default locale setting from the flow core package, and I think it would be a good practice to set this locale setting to some language from the beginning, so you see your application working in the full localized environment for that language, and you will also see if you use the proper view helpers for currency and number formats, you will automatically see those in a proper formats without doing anything. So this can be a good practice to start with. While working on your package, you might be writing a lot of YAML files. So I think we have now, I think, around 5 to 6 YAML files, like objects YAML, cache YAML, settings YAML, in news, nodes YAML, many more. So it's always good practice. If you write your configuration, you can always try to validate it using this command. I think this command must be only on the master branch. I'm not sure, but about the other versions, but I think it's definitely on the master branch. And it is about like you should validate and also cross-check. Like if your settings are in like proper effect. Like sometimes what happens is maybe you overridden something from the flow settings in your package, and maybe any other package is also doing the same. So it's not clear which package got the precedence. So you can use this command configuration show to see what's actually finally used. Little bit about the MVC category. While working on your controllers, you must be having a lot of actions in the controller, so it is always good practice so that you should have all your get and post variables mapped as your action arguments, so that you get the proper benefits of the validations and the security. So this can be a bad example, like you completely bypass the method arguments, and if you use a direct API from the core, which still works, but it's still not good. So this is something can be a good version. Like if you have your application is bigger, and maybe you can have like many controllers in your application. So there are always like common things which you can put in an abstract controller. And like for example, if you want to show which user is logged in, so simply you can define an abstract controller, and in the initialize view function you can assign the variables which are like available for all the controllers. And another thing is, if you are using dependency injection, like whatever common dependencies, like mainly like security context, like that you can only inject in the abstract controller, and you can have your other controllers a little bit clean, look like that. It is also possible that when you are developing your control actions, you may want to stop the execution at certain time for some reason. For example, if you are using some other kind of response type, or using a JSON encoded string, whatever. So instead of using exit, I would suggest to use this stop action execution, action exception. Like exit is like completely kills the current request, and maybe I mean, if you use this exception, it gracefully shuts down flow requests and action. So I think it's better. In your application is always need, like if you want to send emails, then instead of writing those email contents in a text file or somewhere on the controller file, it is always a good practice. You can use the standalone view from the Fluid, and where you can have a Fluid template for your email, so you can have like both formats, like email format in HTML or text format, and you can also localize your email contents using this Fluid. Something about the session. Generally, you should, in your application, you want to use session to store something in the session. And I think what happens is if you use the session API directly, like in your team, there can be a confusion. Like if the team is bigger, nobody knows what keys, session keys you're using and when to write which key, and like it's big communication gap. So I would recommend to use a session scope class, a class which has a session scope, and encapsulate your functionality into the class. Like for example, shopping cart, and you can say, okay, this shopping cart, you can add item into the shopping cart, remove item into the shopping cart. So it's like a session scope class. So this is we can do. Dependency injection. Yeah, so as I said, like while you are architecting your package, you can always think about interfaces. So while doing dependency injection, if you are injecting any class from the framework, you can always see if there is an interface for that class and instead inject the interface. So it uses the proper factory objects also, like defined by framework, and you can also change the later on if you want to use another implementation for the same interface. So you can change this configuration from the object YAML. So for example, if you really want to use session, I have not suggested to use it, but if you inject the session interface, then you will always get the current active session. So because it goes through the proper factory method and you get the active session, and if you inject the session class itself, so all the time you will get the new session. So you will see something different for every request. Something about the persistence. As I told, like from Kickstart, after you kickstart, you should always try to validate your model, domain model, and not only after kickstart, but it's a good practice to always run this doctrine validate command after any small change in your domain model classes. So yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, so it's a good practice to always use doctrine migrations. So you can keep proper history of your schema updates, and you can go forth and back between the versions. So I would say using this doctrine update and create commands are really for like fun activities, not really for a serious project. Yeah, and yes, so if you use the doctrine migrations, do not forget to test also the down migrations. Otherwise what happens is you go on creating new migration scripts and you just say, okay, doctrine migrate, yeah, it worked, and then I'm happy. So always try to test the down migrations also, so that you are sure if something goes wrong in the project, you can roll back at any time. Yeah, I mean, it's true that the down migrations are not always possible. Like if you deleting something, then no luck. So anyway, but at least for the database schema changes, you can follow this. While working on a project, you might have many packages. You are developing many packages and not just one package. So when you do this doctrine migration generate, it generates the migration of all packages altogether. So a best practice would be to split those migration lines and put them inside their respective packages. So this is the same thing how you can see the framework has done. Yeah, and so when you're using migrations, it is not only about migrating the schema, the structure, but you should always think about from the deployment point of view. If you can, you should also write a migration for the data also. Like for example, if you have previously many-to-many relation within two objects, and there was a relation table in between. So maybe the relation was changed now to one to many, and the relation table was dropped. So you should take care that before that migration, you should migrate all your data so that the data is not lost. So while using the UTF-8 support, you can also, I mean, it's a good practice, you can use this UTF-8 Unicode CI instead of the UTF-8 general CI, which is like, I read in mailing list that it is a Stone Age kind of encoding. So either you can define this collation, like when you generate migration, it already contains the current database collation in the migration scripts. So either you can completely remove those collations, or you can keep Unicode CI, and you have to also, in any case, you have to make sure on the server side, the MySQL configuration is also set for the same collation. After you generate migrations, it is a good practice not to delete or modify the migration files. So it's better always to generate a new migration every time. Whatever you change, always is a good idea to generate a new migration. We can say make amendments for your migrations. Yeah, so while doing generating new migrations, it is also good practice. You can first take a pull all upstream changes from your team, from whatever Git or whatever you are using, I think mainly Git, so that you do not get conflicts within, and it will save a lot of time, maybe like resolve conflicts. So better way, before you think you are going to do a new migration, first you can take the pull. At some places, you can use DQL queries, and for that, you should change the doctrine, change your repository class to the base doctrine repository class, and I can suggest only to use the DQL, not every places, but some cases like where you have aggregations, like you want to get sum or max, min, average, some kind of things which is very quick from the DQL. Or you have like some complex join queries you can do with DQL. Yeah, so overall, if you do not use DQL, then you have to end up with something like many nested for each loops, and which is not a good idea. But there is a warning from my side. If you use DQL queries, some of the widgets like paginate, viewer, etc. will not work because they depend on this QOM, like query object model of flow. Yeah. Yeah, so Bastian just told me that, okay, in future we are also going to have solution on, so that DQL will work also for other widgets. Okay, so something about the resources. Mainly, if you want to write like any file or something for any purpose on the disk, it is always better to use write the files in the data directory of the application. And if you want, like if you know the file is going to be live forever or whatever reason, so you can write the file in the data persistent, or if there is a temporary file you want to use, always write in the temporary file. So there is a utility function from the environment class, from the utility namespace. From that you can easily get the current like temporary directory path as per the current context of your application. So this can be useful information for you. Something about the development environment. While using your favorite IDE, I think it must be NetBeans or PHP Storm. I'm not sure if somebody is using anything else. So you should always, a good practice to ignore the folders like data temporary, logs, persistent, which does not contain any source code. So this helps to speed up your IDE very much, and like at least I'm a fan of using shortcuts of keyboard shortcuts to, like if I just want to jump to a class, I just say Control N and type the name of the class. But if you have not ignored the folders, like always these proxy classes will keep popping up, so it's very annoying. So simply just ignore these folders. There is a nice feature from Flow so that you can freeze packages. So as you must be doing your programming, you must be doing it in the development context on your local machine. So to make it a little bit faster, you can freeze all the packages which you do not modify often, so that it will speed up. I think it will speed up very much, like I can say almost up to the speed of production if you have only like 1 or 2 packages which are unfrozen. So there is a command, package freeze, you can use, and you can, I think you can completely freeze all packages from the framework, because we do not make any changes to the framework at all. Something about the error proofing. I mean, I can say you should not really expect the unexpected. So always have, it is good practice to have all your function arguments type intent properly, so there is no chance for any big problems while running the application. Error handling. If you are using domain services, the concept I just told in the architecture side, so it can be good practice to always throw the exceptions from the domain service and catch them in the controller. So you can decide in the controller like what kind of error report you want to do, give to the user, like a flash message, or depending on the CLI, maybe you want to do something else. Utilities. Yeah, there are many utilities. I mean, I just mentioned in my previous slide one of the utility as environment, but there are many other utilities like files, algorithms, array utilities. So I would say it is better to use those utilities whenever you can and stick to the framework as much as possible, so that you do not like have any hassles in between. There are some constants defined by Flow Bootstrap, and I would say, like, in case you want to write a file to some data persistent, or for any reason you want the path of your application, the absolute path, we can use the constants like flow underscore path underscore something. So it is one of the good practice. Yeah, I mean, while always doing programming, you will see a lot of errors of for some misconfiguration or something like this, or some problems with the domain model. You will find these SQL errors, but generally it does not give full information and just gives the error number. So it is this is something you can have handy to run this query in your favorite SQL client like PHP or whatever, or console. So it gives the proper error message. Testing. Yeah, we should, if you are following the complete test-driven development while writing unit tests, it will be a good practice to write your unit tests so that the business logic is tested, and you really no need to worry about to test the framework itself. So I would say if you are using a domain service concept, then you can always write your unit test to cover your domain services, and where you can simply mock the persistence. And the functional tests are to actually test the user stories. So where you actually test your controller actions and see whether your control actions are performing well. So there is a virtual browser concept which you can use from the functional test case base class, where you can actually open a virtual browser, run the action, see the response, and all programmatically. Performance. Yes, it will be good to analyze your application performance from the beginning, and for that we generally use this Sandstorm Plumber package from Sebastian Kulfus, and it internally uses the XHProf PHP extension. So, and it is just a profiler, so actually there is no any overhead actually itself, I mean, of the XHProf extension. If you use the Xdebug, it's really slow because it generates a lot of information which we really don't want for the performance point of view. And mainly, if you use this Plumber package, you don't have to do any change in the code. It is like completely working out of the box. And lastly, it is always good to cache stuff. So there are a couple of cache front ends available. Like you can cache the strings, or you can cache the variables completely. So like these are two front ends available, and there are many backends available, including the Redis backend, the APC, and many other backends are available. Yeah, so that was my last best practice. So I would like to thank Inspiring Flow for giving me a chance to talk here, and I also thank all the core team members for being the inspiration all the time, and the whole Typo3 community. And yeah, that's all. So any questions, feel free to ask, or you can also contact me on Twitter and yeah, IRC, wherever. Yeah, thank you. So questions? Okay. Yeah.
Not quite a question, but more of a recommendation, because often it sounds like there's no alternative to NetBeans. In our company, we recently started developing with Sublime Text, which is a very lightweight editor. It's highly customizable, and it does not take half an hour until it starts.
What's the name of the editor?
Sublime Text.
Sublime. Okay. Okay, I think yeah, it's good to know. Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, Randi.
I have one question. Just a second. Okay.
Yeah, finally. So, do any of you, Pankaj, know how you are proceeding? Let's say that there is this kind of case that we have developed a package, and after a year, we know that half of the data model has to be dropped because of the customer changing mind and so on, surprisingly. And do you keep those migrations still, this way that if you initiate this project from the beginning, you apply 100 migrations just to drop them with 101? And again create a new data model, or do you remove those old migrations? What's your approach to this?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I really don't care, because if I see Typo3 Flow package itself, it contains migrations from last, I think, many years. So as I'm always deciding these best practices based on the framework, so I would just follow that. That's what I see. So do not care about your old migrations. This is what my feeling is. Or you can completely redevelop the package and completely redeploy, drop the database. Also can be another option. So whatever suits is, I think it's fine. Anything else? Okay.
Maybe one question regarding the caching frameworks.
Yeah.
Do you recommend using a cache to cache a complete set of objects against taking them once again from the persistence, or just single strings?
I think I would suggest to use only the string caching. So you just cache a little data, like maybe also you can think of using complete cache of your action, but you have to be careful about the CSRF token and all these things. So like the CSRF tokens are not cached, or the usernames are not cached, or if you have multilingual, then maybe you have to generate a cache for both languages for the user. Depends on a lot of conditions, but I would say, yeah, string cache can be the good start. But I think myself, I have not tried too much with the object caching, but I'm not sure how it works. So, but I think it must be like writing too much serialized objects in the cache. I don't know how it will perform. So far I have used string caching. Yeah. Okay, so any other question? Yeah, I mean, you can freely contact me later on also. So yeah, thank you very much again, and hope we see you again in some other conference. Yeah. Thank you.